It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time to go along with the Watcher on another wacky adventure to a different universe. This is my review of episode 7 of What If. This week, the Watcher takes us into a universe where Thor was raised as an only child. And having never learned how to be a hero, he throws an out-of-control intergalactic party on Earth. Before I properly start with my review, I want you to start the conversation in the comments below. And if you like what you see here, consider clicking the subscribe button. If you're new to the channel, you'll always be aware of whenever there's more What If reviews and more great content. As per this week's episode, it starts off very slow in the sense that there is not much to cover. The beginning of this episode, the premise is interesting in the sense that Odin, turns out, he returned Loki to the Frost Giants, and there was peace amongst the realms, amongst Asgard and Jotunheim, and Thor never had Loki to be lively around him and to cause mayhem, so he causes the mayhem to himself, and so he goes around the entire universe just having parties over and over again. He comes to Vegas with Lady Sif and the Warriors 3, and they throw a party there with all these aliens from all around the world. The first half of this episode is really just fun to look around and see the cameos. We see the Ravagers, we see Howard the Duck, we see Nebula, we see so many species and known characters that we've known throughout the MCU that it's interesting to see them in this setting and having the same mentality as Thor. The Grandmaster is there, Topaz, I mentioned Nebula, Korg is also there. It's just interesting to see how overall relaxed this universe is. But there is still a sense of familiarity as we see Jane Foster, who is tracking Thor's coming down to Earth, but instead of him landing in New Mexico, he lands in Vegas. She goes after them. I was really surprised to see that they got Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman to come into this episode, and at first I thought Jane was actually going to be the main character, and though she plays a great part, it's really Thor's episode and Thor's coming of age per se, of him learning to be not a hero but responsible. Really, this episode has got to be the one that's most packed with returning actors from the MCU, because eventually as Thor is throwing parties all around the world, he starts in Vegas, eventually makes it to France on the next day, and Loki is there as a Frost Giant, Tom Hiddleston voicing him, and they still have this budding relationship that they're a brother from another mother, which is the actual thing, so I guess that's funny. I just like seeing Thor and Loki together, and it's cool seeing Loki as his quote-unquote true self. And with Jane going after Thor, she tracks him down and she finds him, and of course she gets enchanted by his charms nonetheless. And what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. They eventually have Rocket Raccoon all drunk in the sink. Maria Hill comes into the picture because they notice this alien activity that Jane Foster herself was tracking. And Maria Hill, voiced by Kobe Smulders, is the acting director of S.H.I.E.L.D. because Nick Fury is apparently injured because he was trying to get into the party and Korg just slammed him into the ground, so he's got to be very, very injured. And when Nick Fury is injured, you know what happens. Captain Marvel comes into the picture as Thor and Loki and everyone else is having fun in, I guess it was Paris. Captain Marvel comes down to Earth, and we got this really cool fight between Thor and Captain Marvel all around the world. They start in Paris, they eventually make it to Stonehenge, which I've never been to, by the way, I really want to, and Thor just throws Stonehenge into the ground, all of it comes tumbling down. They eventually make it into the desert, I guess Arizona or Las Vegas, and they punch each other really hard. It's a really cool, fun fight, and Captain Marvel ends up being surprised that someone is on her level. I really like how Thor, who is just a very relaxed, he just wants to party kind of guy, he wasn't really having that much of an effect on Captain Marvel, who was going all out on Thor, and she herself was not having that much of an effect on Thor. Thor was taking punches from Captain Marvel better than real people take punches from other real people. I do really love how Thor stops Captain Marvel by putting Mjolnir on top of her chest and she can't get up. And then the party continues. The party is ever going. All these aliens, all these species, which at one point looks like there's a Celestial there, but Celestials are huge, they are giant, so maybe it's someone cosplaying as a Celestial. Nevertheless, the party continues. They go down to Sydney, Australia, a really cool reference because Chris Hemsworth is Australian. And S.H.I.E.L.D. has had enough. They're planning on dropping a nuke on Thor with the help of Captain Marvel, but Jane is like, we're over-exaggerating. This dude just wants to party. And yes, the party has been going for like 3 days with all these aliens coming down to Earth and doing whatever they want. Surtur is suddenly there, also voiced by Clancy Brown again. He melts one of the arms of the Statue of Liberty. The Frost Giants melt, or rather create ice mustaches and beards and whatnot on Mount Rushmore. All kinds of wild things until Jane Foster calls on Heimdall, who has a really funny role in this episode. I really like in this episode how they probably couldn't get Idris Elba back, and so Heimdall just grunts throughout the entire thing, or you just have close-ups of his eyes. I thought that was really funny. I think that usage of Heimdall is really great. They truly did the best they could. And so Jane calls on to Heimdall so she can make it to Asgard and let Frigga know that she has to stop Thor, otherwise S.H.I.E.L.D. would stop Thor. So as Thor is going to slide down the Opera House, I believe it's called, in Sydney. I've never been to Australia. I really want to, so if you want me to be in Australia, make sure you become a member on the channel or donate through the tip link in the description. But before Thor can slide down there, Captain Marvel jumps in and takes him to Siberia, where they're going to have an all-out battle. Maria Hill is about to drop the nuke. Frank Grillo is there as Rumlow. I forgot to mention that. He's there. He's awesome. Really love the packed episode in terms of cast that this week's What If had. Even Clark Gregg is there as Agent Coulson. And so Captain Marvel and Thor are about to go all out, but Frigga shows up and she gives Thor the business like a mother should to her irresponsible teenage son. Captain Marvel lets this be. She knows the situation is handled. And so Thor tries to fix everything real fast as Frigga is coming down to Earth with the help of Heimdall from the Bifrost. And so he calls upon the aliens using his authoritative voice by calling on the thunder to everyone to put things back in place and then go away so he can't pretend he was in this like study group. And so the ending of this episode is alright. They put everything back together, they melt the ice they put on Mount Rushmore, they put like this big wheel from somewhere back in place, Surtur wields the arm of the Statue of Liberty back in place, and Thor puts Stonehenge back vertically, I guess. And yes, for a little bit he's able to fool his mother a little bit, but eventually Mjolnir comes back and it's all dangled with these patches and whatnot, and Frigga finds out. But the relationship between Jane and Thor resumes and ends up kind of being the same as it was in that first Thor film before it develops further. And just as I thought that this episode was going to end with the same issues that last week's had, where the characters end up exactly in the same place, kinda, we have a cliffhanger that I believe we're going to see the conclusion of next week, because we know we'll see more of Party Thor, we know we'll see more of Party Thor with Doctor Strange Supreme, and we know we'll see more of Party Thor and Doctor Strange Supreme with T'Challa Star-Lord, with Warrior Princess Gamora, and with other Avengers, because as this episode is about to end, and the Watcher's saying, and so they lived happily ever after, a portal opens up, and out come Ultron bots, with Ultron behind him, with all the Infinity Stones and a fucking awesome cape. And this is just a silhouette, but it still looks awesome. And inside that Ultron armor, it opens up, and it's Vision, still with a Mind Stone in his head. I cannot wait for this. From one week to the next, I have never been this hyped for a What If episode. This episode, I would say it's the Ant-Man franchise of the What If series. It's really fun, just not that eventful. As I said, that first half of the episode, there's not really much to cover that about, from pointing out what cameos you can see, and it's cool to see Thor under different circumstances with a different personality, and all these other characters with different personalities, maybe apart from Jane and Captain Marvel, who end up being essentially the same as they are. But for the episode to focus on Thor, and this being such a different Thor than the one we know, I enjoyed it. I think it's fine, even if not the one I see myself going back to the most. I'm giving What If Party Thor a B-. But what are your thoughts on this week's What If? Throw them all down there in the comments below, and make sure you click one of the videos I'll leave at the end of this one if you enjoy what you saw and want to see more. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back very soon with more reviews, and I hope to see you in those. And so until the next one, love each other and love the movies.